Financial wellness really is how finances and money, your relationship to finances and money. And is that relationship a healthy one, or is it a toxic one? Is it a stressful one? Is it a one full of ease and love? You're like, money loves me, so I have no beef with money. You know what I mean? So that's what financial wellness means in a holistic kind of way. But what I think is super important for your listeners, particularly Black women, women of color, financial wellness is the bedrock for a lot of other aspects of wellness. Because if the money ain't right, you got the anxiety, you got all this other stuff going on, right? And also as women, it's really important to consider, regardless if you're at home in your home country or abroad, money creates opportunities and allows you to have choices. There's nothing worse than being in a situation that you cannot leave because you do not have the money.
You're listening to the Her Money Story podcast with your host, Felicia Gopaul. Every woman has a story that explains her relationship to money and finances, and a woman's story about money shapes her actions, both positive and not, for years to come. This podcast is for any woman learning how to take care of her money so that her money can take care of her now and into the future.
Christine, and welcome to the Her Money Story podcast. I'm going to just kind of jump in and ask you some questions about living abroad. So one of the goals of my audience is oftentimes to live abroad. They have these grand visions of how they're going to do it. So what motivated you, Christine, to decide to live abroad?
I mean, honestly, I've always wanted to move abroad and live abroad since I was 17. I studied abroad in Spain when I was 20. And then I had always been a dream of mine. In 2014, I actually walked the Camino de Santiago, which is a trek, a pilgrimage across Spain. And that's what really solidified it in my mind, from like a dream to concretely a place. And then 3 years after that, I decided to make that leap. But to be honest, I think the real motivating factor was always, I just was curious about the world, and I didn't want to take someone else's opinion on what the world held for me, especially as a Black woman, a Black American woman, a Caribbean woman. I think there's a lot of fear and propaganda. A lot of people are like, oh, don't leave the US because of X, Y, and Z. And I think I want to believe that most people have good intentions, and they don't want you to come across harm. But I think it's most important for me and for all of us to go and see for ourselves and make up our own minds about places. And that's what really motivated me to do that. I think also it's just, I knew that there was a different way to live life. I spent all of my life achieving and aspiring. I've been doing all the things that my parents had wanted me to do. And I ended up not feeling very fulfilled or happy. And so I wanted to bet on myself and see if I went a different way, how I would feel, a different lifestyle, different country, different values, if that would align with me better. And so far, yeah, I had a good hypothesis. It did work out that way.
So one of the things that I've heard you talk about on your podcast is I've heard you talk about the 5 dimensions of wellness and how important that is when you are living abroad. So could you talk to me a little bit more about the 5 dimensions?
Yeah. So I always tell people on my podcast, Flourish, it's about utilizing living abroad as a pathway to wellness. And wellness here refers to physical wellness, financial wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness. I think that you do yourself a disservice to think that moving abroad is going to solve all aspects of your life. life, especially if you haven't done the work initially to figure out what is the state of all these aspects of wellness currently, so that you can decide what are the things that are working in my life, what are the things that are not working in my life, and then really examine the whys to both those questions. It's something that I actually delve in deeper. I have a Moving Abroad with Intention guide that I launched last year with a lot of great reviews. So shout out to everybody. But it's just a workbook journal prompt series that's really about getting clear and honest about the state of your life, not to shame you, not to prevent you from doing things. But the thing is that you can watch so many YouTube videos, you can listen to so many podcasts, but you are an individual, complex person. And what's going on in your life is personal to you. But also, I think more importantly, what you think and your expectations from living abroad, that's very individual, right? How you define a life well lived, a life full of wellness is very individual to you. So it behooves you to actually get to know yourself deeply before you make any plans to go abroad, to think about the things that are working for me. Are they internal or external? Meaning internal, the things that are just within me, my personality, my character, the things that are external, which are my environment. It works both ways, right? It's positive and negative. The things that are positive, that are internal to me, I'm secure to know that, yeah, I get to take this with me no matter where I go. The things that are positive about my external environment, I can say, okay, these are definitely clues to things that are going to continue or enhance my wellness. And on the reverse side, the things that are not working out, that I don't like, the things that are internal, that's my baggage. That's my stuff that's going to follow me all around the world. And I can't blame Senegal. I cannot blame Colombia or New Zealand or whatever, like a lot of people like to do. It's me. And I need to deal with it. Doesn't mean that you have to be healed. You need to be aware of it. Maybe start putting in a plan into place to heal or to manage it before you go. And then the things that are not working for you externally should be red flags. They should be things that you will not settle for because you've already experienced it and you know that does not contribute to your wellness. And you do that across all those 5 aspects of wellness. You get really clear about who you are as a person. And then it gives you a good roadmap as to the places and the communities that would be a great environment to nourish you as a person, that will actually help you live a life well lived abroad. It's really, really crucial to think about it. I also think that by breaking it down into these 5 aspects, which I'm not the first person that have ever done it, but I think it's so important, particularly for Black women, women of color, to do so, because for us, wellness is not an aesthetic. It's not bath bombs and crystals, which is what I like to say. I have both of these things. I like them very much, but let's be real. Across the world, the diaspora, African diaspora, or anyone else's diaspora, wellness isn't an aesthetic. It can't be. It has to be an embodiment. It has to be so much more for us. It has to be a way of being and moving and relating to ourselves and our family and the world. And so it behooves us to get to know ourselves, to take that time, not to just move in a way of escapism or romanticism, just because, ooh, it looks nice on the Instagram. No, we need embodiment. It doesn't matter if it looks good. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. Like, oh, you moved there. But if you're living a life well lived, if you are being nourished and supported, it doesn't really matter if it looks great on IG or if you even post on IG at all. And so I think that when we talk about wellness, it's important for people to get really serious about it, get really interested in who you are and what you really want.
So let me ask you, you talk about these 5, I called it aspect, I talked the dimensions, but you called it aspect. But really, let's just kind of dive into a couple of them. So you talked about professional wellness. So what does professional wellness mean? And what does it look like when you're living abroad?
Yeah, professional wellness means how you are of service in a professional aspect, how you give and lend your brilliance, your expertise, or how you work abroad. And I like to frame it as your service because I think a lot of people, particularly for speaking about Black Americans, are coming from a situation in which they don't necessarily feel that they're moving in a space where they are giving of their service. That's a particular energy. People are receiving that service from them. They're appreciating that service. It feels very much like an exploitation, like running on a hamster wheel. It feels very much burdensome. And when I'm talking about professional wellness, I'm saying, what kind of environment would be conducive for you to give of your brilliance, your expertise, your background in an environment that was going to receive that you're going to have that kind of fulfillment of building, creating, enhancing, helping? What's going to do that? And what kind of environment that you're going to feel maybe supported by coworkers in a company, or a work culture that actually suits you? Because working abroad isn't, I don't know, jet set and champagne or something like that. It's not. There's some work cultures that are even maybe more abusive than American work cultures. I've had guests on my podcast who works as an architect in Japan. She got her master's in Japan. She speaks perfect Japanese, a Black woman from Jamaica, and she experienced bullying for like the better part of her first year there. But if anyone knows about Japanese work culture, that's very common. And so it's important to consider what that professional wellness means to you, and not think that moving abroad, everything is gravy. I'm going to work in France and it's going to be amazing. I've also interviewed several guests who worked in France and they're like, it's not amazing. There's different types of work cultures for you to think about. Work culture can also be the amount of support and benefits that you get. Okay. It could be about compensation. It could be about the amount of holidays and vacation days that you have. But that's important for you to understand that about yourself. What is it that about your current situation that's not working for you, that's dissatisfying, or that you experience dissatisfaction? And what is it that you need, especially if working abroad is part of your story? And so for me, professional wellness really meant having the space and time to create and to build relationships in the way that I wanted to, and to be able to really be very choosy about the types of clients that I have. I'm a business strategist by trade. And so I have a business in which I have clients primarily in the United States, and I get to really choose who I work with and how long I do so. I get to be really exclusive about that. I also get to decide on how I work, what hours I work, what days I work, and I put a price on it and I say, this is the price. But I'm in a situation, I live in Spain, that I've cultivated that. I've created a space for me to have that professional wellness. I've also created a space that part of my professional wellness is not always tied to compensation. Here in Spain, I've developed professional meetups and things like that that satisfy a different part of my professional wellness, the need for community, meeting with other podcasters, meeting with other women entrepreneurs in the city. For me, that's what professional wellness is. It's a fulfillment. I need to feel poured into, and I need to be able to feel poured into other people as well. But you don't know that if all you're doing is trying to escape one situation and going to another situation. You don't know that if you are romanticizing living in Paris and having a beret and a crepe and a baguette every day. You have to really get to know who you are as a professional and what that means to you, and what kind of environment, again, is going to nourish that for you.
I can hear how important that is, but that also kind of leads into the second pillar of wellness that you often talk about. And of course, it's the one that's related to me, which is the financial wellness. So what does financial wellness mean, and what does that look like?
Yeah, financial wellness is super critical. Financial wellness means that you are living more than just enough. You have an environment, and I say environment because financial wellness touches every aspect of your life and your habits and the things that you do. So it's not just money management, which is very important abroad, but it really is, it's a way of seeing and viewing your world, and a lifestyle is financial wellness. From going from a place that maybe you're in the US working, paycheck to paycheck, or in the US, just constant consumerism. Every time I go back to the US, I'm like, there's a new gadget that I didn't know existed. Apparently I need it because it's on in all of my friends' houses. I'd be like, what is this? Financial wellness really is your relationship to finances and money. And is that relationship a healthy one, or is it a toxic one? Is it a stressful one? Is it a one full of ease and love? You're like, money loves me, so I have no beef with money. So that's what financial wellness means in a holistic kind of way. But what I think is super important for your listeners, particularly Black women, women of color, financial wellness is the bedrock for a lot of other aspects of wellness. Because if the money ain't right, you got the anxiety, you got all this other stuff going on. And also as women, it's really important to consider, regardless if you're at home in your home country or abroad, money creates opportunities and allows you to have choices. There's nothing worse than being in a situation that you cannot leave because you do not have the money. And now add that being abroad. Like, that is not okay. That is not okay. And so I know that a lot of people are fearful for going abroad because they are like, what am I going to do for money? Which I like, there's no need to be fearful, but that's an important question. What will you do for money? But it's important for you to understand, what is it that you need your money to do? What is the job that you're giving your money to do for you currently in your life? And a lot of times people don't even understand that kind of phrasing. They have a budget, or they know how much money they spend every month, but they don't really see it as the job that the money is doing for them. And I think that the opportunity of moving abroad may actually be really helpful for you to reprogram that relationship. Because a lot of people think, I'm going to move abroad, I'm going to save a lot of money. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, why do you have that assumption? You're just going to move somewhere, is it's going to be cheaper, and then that's going to be the balm to all your financial ails? Because if you mismanage your money at home, you're going to mismanage extra money abroad. Okay. And the thing is going abroad for a lower cost of living is not a bad thing. I don't want people to think that I'm poo-pooing that at all. It's not always everyone's motivation. Sometimes people move to Switzerland, and that is not a low cost of living. Sometimes people say Thailand or Switzerland, I pick Switzerland. Or sometimes people pick Thailand. The issue, though, is that perhaps you're in a situation in which you don't feel like you can give this money a job that's going to aid into your ease, into your sustainability. So maybe you're paycheck to paycheck and you're like, I need this relief. I want to experience a lower cost of living because I don't want to have this anxiety for my life. And I want to give this money a job. I want to say, okay, I want to invest in my children's education in this particular way. I want to invest in my retirement. I want to invest in my experiences, my health, all these different things. It's really important to shift that kind of mindset, because if you're like a lot of people that are abroad, you will be managing maybe several different types of budgets while you're abroad. You may still have like a US budget because you may have US expenses, and you may have budgets abroad. And then you may also have a budget for your investments, depending on if it's going to be some stocks or things like that, or real estate. It becomes a little bit complicated. So it's important for you to get organized and get clear about your motivations. I'm moving abroad because, yes, I want this lower cost of living, and this is what I'm going to do with this money. This is what I'm going to do with it. Give it a job. I think this is the thing about living in the United States, is that it's such a rough and tumble dog eat dog situation that I think a lot of people are beat down and they're exhausted. And they're like, you mean I got to think some more? You mean I got to work some more? And I'm like, yes, but this time you're going to do it for the cultivation of a life well lived, on your own terms. So when you say, okay, I'm going to give this money a job, you can really feel the seeds that you're planting for your future. Whereas maybe before you're trying to put as much away as you can, but it's not fulfilling because you feel like you're going without. Now you're giving your money a job and you're feeling fulfilled and you don't feel like you're going without and you're living the lifestyle that you want to. But does that happen? Does that befall people? I don't believe so. I think that people have to be careful about some of these YouTube videos that they be watching, Facebook forums that they be listening and typing into. A lot of people will sell you a bill of goods because they got something to sell you. A lot of times people will tell you the highlight reel. A lot of times people will just lie to you. That's why Instagram photos and things like that is not the truth. A lot of people are not going to tell you about the struggles that they have, dire consequences to bad financial decision making, because who would want to do that? But I think it's so important, especially if you want to go abroad, and especially if you have that already anxiety about what am I going to do with my money or how am I going to make money? Take the time now to first define what financial wellness means to you. Really understand what that means. Start saying, what are the jobs that I wish my money did for me now? So that as you approach living abroad, working abroad, you have those goals in mind. So that will dictate what is really important to you, whether it be a certain location in a certain region, or if it's a certain compensation package, because sometimes people move abroad and they don't make more money at all. Maybe they're making money on the local currency, but their housing is taken care of. Their kid goes to international school. They have a live-in housekeeper and a house manager and a nanny, and then they get flown back to their house and their home country every Christmas and every Easter. There's a lot of other things. So when we talk about financial wellness, maybe you don't aspire to be a millionaire. However, you need to define it for yourself. And especially if you're wanting to live abroad, you're going to need to consider what retirement is going to look like for you. One, because of the state of Social Security in the United States, but also even if there is going to be a Social Security for you, I don't know if it's going to be enough. So there's so many different things to think about. I don't want people to just think, I'm going to move to Mexico. It's going to be all vacation and whatever. And Mexico's lovely. But if we're talking about sustainability, if we're talking about longevity, if we're talking about holistic wellness and health, and money really is the bedrock to all of these things until we all agree that it's not, then defining your financial wellness for yourself and then enacting a plan and having those goals in mind are definitely essential.
So you had a lot to say in defining and talking about financial wellness. I think that the thing that really resonated with me is you were talking about finances being the bedrock. It really is the bedrock of everything that you do. And the other thing that you really said that I think that I really want to drive home for our listeners is the sustainability. It's not just about moving abroad, but it's moving abroad in a way that is sustainable. Because in those same forums, I'm a lurker. So I lurk in there and I see people who have posted that they went to so-and-so, but they didn't do it in the way that you are talking about, and then they're back. And for me, if one of my dreams is to live abroad, I would not want to be living abroad for a period of time. I would want to be able to permanently live abroad. I met, when I was traveling, somebody in Paris that I used to work with out back in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? So she has been able to move to Paris sustainably. And so I know that one of the things that she put in place was the financial piece and the professional piece. But the thing that I think is really interesting, and the thing that I'd like you to kind of maybe cap this part of the conversation off with, is just talking about the emotional and mental aspect of living abroad. Because I don't know that people give that a whole lot of thought and credence before they make the jump. Because as you said, some people are choosing to move to escape their life here in the United States or wherever it is that they are. And they haven't given a whole lot to the emotional or mental aspect of it. So could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, emotional wellness and mental wellness is just part of that sustainability. There's plenty of people that live abroad and who are miserable. I know nobody knows about it because they don't have podcasts and they don't have blogs. They don't talk about it. They don't put it on the IG, right? But there's a lot of people who are miserable. And I think one aspect of being miserable abroad is not having emotional wellness, which I would refer to as like community, like that social wellness, that well-being. And then obviously the mental wellness, because depending on where you are, there's significant cultural changes, language barriers, things like that, or if you even were struggling with some mental issues before you went abroad, depression, anxiety, anything else, and not necessarily having that kind of resource or not knowing where to get those resources, it will obviously have a detrimental effect on how you live. Now, emotional wellness, I talk about a lot because I think, particularly speaking about the Black community, a Black American community, I find that a lot of people just ask like, well, are there Black people there? Just anywhere. And then they just assume like, if there's Black people there, then I'll be straight. And I love a vibrant Black community. Love it, love it, love it. I discuss it on the podcast whenever I can. But just like at home, like not all skin folk are kinfolk. It's the same abroad. Also, Blackness is not monolithic. So how you perceive and move in your Blackness is not how other people move in their Blackness, right? Or how they're going to receive you. And I think that's really hard for people to come to grips with if they are in a white country, or if they're even on the continent of Africa. Because again, I think people who don't do the necessary work make generalizations, and those generalizations are always going to hurt your feelings. It just is what it is. Just as you think that you're a very unique butterfly, everybody else thinks that too. So you try to come at people with generalizations like, well, I'm Black, you Black, why aren't we friends? They're like, I don't know you. I don't know you. You know what I mean? So it's important for people to not go abroad and assume that a community, a culture is going to be the balm to everything that ails them. A community and a culture, they were there before you landed and they were minding their own business. It's important to go into that situation with reciprocity, because that's how you cultivate community. It is not take, take, take. It is give and take. And it takes time to make friends and to cultivate community. You don't just walk in and have people who are like, yeah, you just come to my house and do everything with me now that you are here. There's not a lot of cultures. And you know what? I'm tired of seeing people post being like, my aunt, grandma, cousin, whoever just landed with $5 in one place and became the mayor of the city and like all this nonsense. And I'm like, let me tell you, if there's so many blog posts about people, how hard it is for people to make friends after 30, 40 years old, think about doing that abroad. Yeah. You know, if you don't speak the language, yeah, you may find yourself just in like American societies. Like there's like a lot of chapters of American society, like in Barcelona and Madrid. You might just be doing that. And although it's comforting, everybody speaks English, everybody's American, but also you to think to yourself, just being American is not enough for me to be friends with you, or you speaking English is not enough for us to be friends. So it's really important for you to understand, what does community really mean to me, and what kind of support will I need, and how will I manage in the in-between time, because there is a period of waiting, of cultivating before, you have to drop the seeds of friendship and then you got to harvest it, but it's not on the same day. So it's really important for people to really understand, what are they looking for, and how are they going to contribute to the cultivation of that? I always tell people, just be prepared to be very uncomfortable for at least the first year, obviously for a variety of reasons. But I'm an introvert and I had to force myself to go out of my house, which I was like, you can't Amazon Prime friends. No, you can't. You have to go outside, go do the things that you're interested in, and continuously meet people and be like, yep, no, yep, no, and cultivate relationships. It takes work. And I know that people are tired and they're like, that's not what I want to hear, but that is life. That just is life. So I don't want you to post in these groups and be like, does nobody do anything? Why is nobody put on an event? So you want people to put on an event so that you can come to it, so you can have friends. Is that what you're telling me? You know, like you have got to be an active participant in that community. And then to mental wellness is super crucial to be honest about where you are in your mental wellness, especially if you're coming from a space of burnout or what other kind of distress. When I moved to Spain, I didn't have the language of burnout. I just was tired and I felt like I was on the edge, but I didn't even really know what that was. I was like, don't feel great. It wasn't until I moved to Spain, several years living into Spain, that I was like, oh, burnout? Yes. Anxiety, depression? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I had all these. I was experiencing this. And it's important that if you can know that before you move, but if you don't, have a game plan as to how you're going to support yourself. Your friends and family are amazing, but that is not enough for your mental wellness. It just isn't. Especially if you're going abroad alone, your friends and family may not get it. They may not get what you're actually experiencing. So it's important to have a professional, I believe, in your arsenal of resources. Now, that can be tricky. I've had several therapists on my podcast, and what I've found is that a workaround for a lot of therapists is that instead of necessarily giving you therapy, because therapy is tied to a licensure with a state that you have residency. So if you can't find a therapist in the state that you have residency in, you can find other therapists who maybe give life coaching that can help you in the meantime. Or I've been fortunate, I have a therapist that lives in Barcelona. I currently live in Valencia, and that has been a big godsend. Now, to find a psychiatrist, you will definitely need to find someone probably in country, because that is medication and prescriptions. But there are some directories that are global that you can find either through like an American Society, kind of club chapter, their Facebook groups, internations, things like that. But it's important for you to be honest about your needs and not assume that whatever you're going through is going to be resolved by living abroad. Because I first moved to Spain, I lived in La Rioja, which is the very famous wine region here in Spain. And I was on sabbatical. I was teaching English for the first 9 months. I say teaching very loosely. I was working 12 hours a week, 3 days a week, and drinking lots of very affordable, delicious Rioja wine. And it did not solve my burnout. Surprisingly enough, I was still burnt out. I still had an immense amount of anxiety, and I was still kind of wavering about just who I was and what I wanted. And so it really is important that you don't believe that living abroad is going to solve your mental wellness issues, your emotional wellness issues, because it won't. But what it can do is create the space. I had plenty of time and it can open up and free up the resources for you to give that the appropriate amount of time and attention. But moving abroad will not heal you. And I have to repeat that. And I know people want to fight me. They're like, well, my cousin's brother. And I'm like, I'm glad that they experienced some kind of immaculate healing. Yeah. But for the majority of everybody else in these streets, in these international streets, that's not how it works. And I don't want you to play yourself by thinking all I need to do is just make this move and everything's going to be better. It doesn't work like that. The human brain doesn't work like that. Us as humans just think about how much socialization and how much programming and maybe how much trauma, even the things that weren't habitual for you are habitual because you've been living in that state for a while. That does not just fall to the wayside because you got on a plane. It's habitual. It takes time to unlearn, to unbecome, and then choose who you want to become and actually become. So to give yourself that kind of peace, work on it before, have a game plan before, and also just know that this is something that you're going to have to continuously cultivate while you're abroad.
So one of the things that you said in our conversation, in our pre-conversation before we hopped on this video today, is you talked about the fact that part of their preparation is that living abroad is not an escapism. Whoever you were before travels with you. It reminds me of a story that I had heard about this person who moved to a different country, and they were saying all the people were rude. And when the person asked, well, how were the people that in the place that you were? It's just like, well, they were all rude there too. And it's just like, well, the only thing that is the same between those things is you. So your world is filtered through the lens that you see it in. So you can't just hop on a plane and go to wherever you're going to and think that you are going to escape whatever it is that you feel like you want to leave behind, because you are still there.
Absolutely. Wherever you go, there you are. You bring yourself. And I think that's the most humbling thing about living abroad, is that you will attract the exact same cycles in people, in situations, and people just have different accents. And you'll be like, what? How is this person just like? Because it's you. It's you. And I say that with so much love because it's something I had experienced too. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? It's like, no, it's me. So it's important for people to take accountability. They want to experience the empowerment of living abroad, but there's also accountability there. See, like that's the thing that people want to like shy from. I'm like, no, that's you. And the great thing about living abroad is that it really does hold up a mirror to who you are. So good, bad, or ugly, you'd be like, oh, well, that's who I am. But you don't got to stay that way, because I think the magic of living abroad and how it can be a pathway to wellness is that it gives you space. And so this is how I describe it. You're outside of your cultural context, and you're not actually within the cultural context of the place that you're living in. So for me, I'm from Atlanta. I'm not in Atlanta. I live in Spain for 5 years, and I'm not Spanish. No one expects me to be Spanish. I don't have any of these expectations. I'm in this space of maybe otherism. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to be othered. I want everyone to accept me. But you know what? I find it to be the very rare person who's like completely accepted. And they could have been married to so-and-so for 50 years, but they'll still be like the foreigner, and they'll speak perfect whatever language. But there's amazing opportunity about being in that space, because being in that space allows you to define who you are. Not like, you change your name and go underneath an alias or something, but like you get to really choose who you are, because all of the preconceived notions, all of the people who think that you, the people who knew you from, when you're 5 years old, 15 years old, and only define you from those situations, they're not here to tell everybody who they think that you are. You're in a situation where people don't really have a lot of expectations for you, because they're like, you're a foreigner, so you tell us. They may have stereotypes, but you'll say, no, I'm this, and this. And they're like, okay, well, that's strange, but it's expected because you're a foreigner. You have that opportunity to define who you are. However, the pathway to wellness is in that space, but also in the opportunities that you experience when you feel the resistance, when you rub up against the dissonance, the things that are not like your culture. Because what it does is that it wakes you up. It keeps you radically present to your life, so that you start making conscious, intentional decisions that are different. You're trying them on for size. I always give people the example about breakfast, because people will become irate about breakfast. Meaning, you live in Spain, but you expect an English breakfast. Why? Why would you do that? But the English do. That's another conversation for another podcast. But in that moment, you're irritated because all you wanted was some bangers and beans, whatever they call it. But instead of being mean and foul mouthed, or just being like just incomprehensibly mad, you feel the resistance that you feel, and you say, I'm open to a different possibility for breakfast. Let me see what this just a coffee and a little cookie is all about, which they like to have for Spanish breakfast. But also Spanish people, they have like 5 meals. So they'll be all right. Like first breakfast, you have it, you have second breakfast. So that kind of opportunity to just try something else on for size can also translate to trying on different values, different ways of moving and being. And then you start trying on different things that you thought were so solid in your mind. This is what you have for breakfast. This is how you do this. And all of a sudden, it's not how you do that. It's not the only way to do things. And all of a sudden, that's not the only way for you to live a life. And all of a sudden, you're in this space where you get to choose different ways of being and living. That is where living a life well lived. That's where living abroad can be a pathway to wellness. But again, it's a cultivation. You have to rub up against things that are uncomfortable for you, because that's what makes you wake up to your habitual nature and choose differently. And that's how you actually start cultivating a different life, a life that better suits you, because you have to also be open for a better life. A lot of people give lip service to living a better life. A lot of people give lip service to living a better financial life, but do they actually do the work necessary to live the life they want to? No, but if you're met with some resistance that keeps you awake to that, and then you get to consciously try something else on for size, make these different decisions, it becomes easier and different, right? Because you're used to all these changes. That, I think, is where living a life well lived, seeing living abroad as a pathway to wellness, that is the key to it. But that requires self-awareness, and that requires a capacity to be open and to surrender. And a lot of people give lip service to freedom, but they don't actually want to cultivate their own freedom. And a lot of times, a lot of people who think that they're not free, it's not that anybody's keeping them from being free, it's that they're choosing not to be free.
We're coming close to the end. So let me ask you, so one of the reasons why a lot of people that are part of my listener base, one of the things that they aspire to is to live abroad. And so one of the ways that they describe it is because they want to be financially free. So is it that you can become financially free when you're living abroad, or is financial freedom something different when you're living abroad?
I mean, I think financial freedom is a definition you have to make for yourself. I think that, as we discussed before, I think you need to have a definition and a game plan, an intention as to how living abroad is going to support aid in your financial freedom. I don't believe that moving abroad, financial freedom just befalls you. It just falls down to the sky.
Rains down. There we go.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. No, I actually would say that with like no generalization. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. Yeah, maybe you can live in a space or a place that the cost of living is lower and maybe engage in some geo-arbitrage, but also you would actually need to understand what geo-arbitrage is. You would actually need to be able to make money moves like that. You actually need to understand currency exchanges. You need to understand how you hold your money. Do you have a bank account that holds multiple currencies? You need to understand FATCA and FBAR. You need to understand how you're going to invest your money. Are you going to go into international financial markets? Are you going to stay in the American financial markets? What are the consequences of going to international markets? If you're going to go into real estate investment, what is that all about? Because real estate investment is not the same all around the world. There are countries that you will never be able to own property. You can just lease it for 99 years. And Airbnb, like touristic licenses, are starting to become very hard to get in certain places. So financial freedom does not befall you. And, there's a lot of popular YouTubers. What are they called? It's a Black family in Portugal. I forget their name. They're so cute. There's a mom and a dad, 2 daughters, and they have the FIRE movement, and they have everything like that. If you watch their story, financial freedom did not befall them. They had been working for financial freedom for years. They had a game plan. Mm-hmm. They launched a YouTube video. They have YouTube income. They have courses. They have a podcast now. Their kid has a YouTube. Like, financial freedom is not befalling them because they live in Portugal. And also they have like a couple of rental properties now because they're popular. So marketing it is not going to be an issue for Airbnb. Like, financial freedom did not befall them and is still not befalling them. That is extremely intentional, and they are cultivating it. Yes, it's work, and it's work that maybe they are happy to do because they get to do it as a family and they are working for their own ends. And so that's a whole different kind of work. But That's a cultivation. It does not befall anyone. And anybody that tells you that has a trust fund or maybe is in illegal exporting, importing, if you catch my drift. Right. And that's and that's still hard work, I would assume. So I want to tell everybody, no, it's not easy to become financially free. But what living abroad does or can do, it can open up the door. It can create the space if you have the intention. And I know that people don't want to hear that. They want to say, I'm just moving to Portugal and it's going to be easy street. Perhaps you have a pension in which you can live off that pension for the rest of your life. You can move to Thailand and you can live like a big spender. If that's your intention, if that's your definition of financial wellness and financial freedom, cool. But if your financial freedom is tied to you to still be making money and earning money, then you need to I think you need to be way more intentional about what that definition really means. Because again, does it mean a compensation? Does it mean a dollar amount or some kind of currency amount? Does it mean a lifestyle of benefits? What does that mean? Does it mean that you have cash that's freed up to go into these real estate investments in the US or abroad? Like, what does that mean? And we can't get around that. And I don't want people to fall into generalization because it's in the generalization that people feel like they're spinning their wheels. They're like, well, I've been watching all the YouTube videos. I've been listening to the podcast. I just don't know what to do. I feel overwhelmed. You feel overwhelmed because you don't want to get specific about your life. That's why you feel overwhelmed. You have to get specific about your life. You have to understand what's the balance sheet looking like in my life? What are my liabilities? What are my assets? You know what I mean? Do I have equity? Do I have debt? And how am I going to manage that? Do I have a retirement fund? What is that going to look like? How do I want my retirement to look like? That is something that's personal. So if you feel like you're spinning your wheels or it's so hard, you need to get clear about what is it that's going on now and what you expect living abroad is going to do for you. Get really clear about that and see if it aligns, because maybe it's about starting your own business and going abroad. Maybe it's about finding employment abroad, but just going abroad and thinking like things are going to be great, unless you have a great pension and investments that you can live off of, cool. If that's not your situation though, there's plenty of ways for you to live in a financially well state abroad, but it's going to take intentionality and you have to be real with yourself.
So, Christine, I know you've got some great resources that you have created because you've been living abroad for a while and people reach out to you to get more information. So if people wanted to learn about some of the resources you have, could you share a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. First, you can always check out my podcast, Flourish in the Foreign. It's across all major platforms. You can check out the website, flourishintheforeign.com. I have 4 products. So I first have Moving Abroad with Intention Guide. It's something that I alluded to earlier. So if you are super confused and super overwhelmed about what does your personal moving abroad strategy even look like, what does that dream look like, I would highly suggest just getting the guide. Just get the Moving Abroad with Intention guide, do the journal prompts. Honestly, you don't got to turn them into anybody, but you need to be honest with yourself. It makes no sense for you to lie to yourself, writing it down on some piece of paper, because if you're not honest with yourself, it will come back to haunt you abroad. So please do that. So I have that guide. I also have a Build a Business Abroad guide. So for people who are playing with the idea of building a business and they want to understand, how can I do that? Especially support me abroad. Like that is something that I highly suggest people to do. I kind of go through briefly my general framework as to how I help my clients. And then also I have a lot of resources in there for you to really deeply consider some of the aspects of running a business abroad, whether it be brick or mortar or be a strictly online business. I also have a Moving Abroad with Intention course. So if you're like, I'm ready to make some moves, regardless if it's in the next 6 months or 3 years, you're like, I want a bespoke game plan to my life and my family on how I need to make this move abroad, I highly suggest you grab that course. It is a 5-week course, and we go through everything from your vision of a life well lived to employment, to money management, to how to prepare to go and how to land abroad successfully successfully, which also includes repatriation. So sometimes people think going back home is a failure, but it's not a failure if it's done on your own terms. If you're blessed to have the capability, the means, the passport to be able to move around globally like that, if you decide to go home, you can do so on your own terms. It doesn't necessarily have to be a failure, but we really discuss what does it look like to live abroad long term and also make some of those decisions about repatriating as well. And you can also find more information about that at flourishintheforeign.com. And then I have my Build a Business Abroad group coaching program, which I am super passionate about. I am a business strategist. I started to do business strategy when I was in law school. And so it's been just a passion of mine for many, many years. And it's something that I love to do, and be able to do it in an intimate group cohort setting is really important to me. I always keep the cohorts small, or every cohort is kind of small, because I like to get cozy with everyone. Starting a business or expanding your side hustle into a full-time hustle is scary, and you need support. And you definitely need the helping hand of somebody who's done it and continues to build businesses, international businesses, which is what I do professionally. I help thought leaders and authors based in the United States really expand their businesses to actually support their lifestyles and their professional wellness, their pace of work that they want to do. And a lot of my clients have international aspirations. So that's why they come to me. It's like, how do I do what I do? And then also I want to live half the year abroad. So I get to do that on like a smaller kind of scale for my group coaching. If you're interested in that, you can check out my personal professional website, which is christinejob.com, ChristineJob.com.
So Christine, this has been tremendous. And basically, if you, as a listener, you will see the links to all of her various different resources in the show notes. And Christina, I just want to finish with one question. And it's kind of out of the blue. If there is a song that is the Christine anthem from where you are financially or your financial journey, what would it be?
Yes, it is definitely Cozy by Beyonce off of her latest album. I really liked her lyric, comfy in my skin, comfy with who I am, because I think that is the major part of financial wellness. It's not about comparing yourself to the Joneses. It's not about beating yourself up on past, poor financial decisions. It's about being comfortable about who you are in your financial journey. It's about being clear and comfortable with your aspirations. Maybe you're like, I have no aspirations of being a billionaire, millionaire. I want this type of lifestyle, because she's comfortable. That's the thing. It's being cozy and comfortable. And for me, I'm all about that wellness. I'm all about that soft life. So for me, it's like, it doesn't have to be sexy or glamorous to anybody else, because she's comfortable in the skin that I am, just comfortable with what I'm doing. And that's it.
All right. So Christine, it has been tremendously great to listen, sharing with you and having you share a little bit about the world of living abroad. I think this is going to be a tremendous resource for my listeners. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Her Money Story Podcast. Want more from Felicia Gopaul? Then subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss a minute. While you're there, feel free to rate and leave a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're interested in going deeper, visit FeliciaGopaul.com. Thank you again, and we'll catch you in our next episode.